Good evening, everyone. I have to say, it's odd to speak on this side of the chapel. As a student here at Acadia University, I have come across several books of numerous topics, and all for the purpose of learning more. I've also grown up with a wide range of books available to me as my family made frequent trips to the local public library. Granted, I have probably not read as much as some of the speakers that have shared their wisdom with us over the semester. It has been remarkable to hear from our speakers this term, as they have shown us many inspirational books that have helped guide them in their lives. For that, I am grateful to Tim for letting them and myself share with you books that have made an impact in our lives. For me to pick only one book would not be possible. There are just too many good books out there. There are books on history, geography, culture, self-help, all forms of religion, business, math, and science, health books, art books, music books, poetry, languages, fantasy, adventure, romance, travel, and don't even get me started on the number of textbooks out there. That's not even half the genres out there either. I read a website, not a book, that had at least 65 genres on it. Not to mention that the number of books in each genre keeps growing. Google has estimated that approximately 130 million unique titles were published in 2010 alone. The imagination and the flow of information is amazing, and in this day and age, which is just truly remarkable. Books written in different time periods have an amazing ability to give us a glimpse of what it was like then in that world, whether it was real or not. We get a sense of the characters, the people, their ideals, morals, values, and beliefs, which shape, along with their upbringing, who they are. I want to discuss with you 3 books that I absolutely love and have learned from and are in no way a true reflection of all the books that I love and cherish. They illustrate books through the ages, with Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, Hannah's Suitcase by Karen Levine, and I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak. The first book, Jane Eyre, was written in 1847 under the pen name Currier Bell, later revealed as Charlotte Bronte as the author. This book has withstood years and is considered a classic and ahead of its time after publication. The book is about Jane Eyre, an orphaned 10-year-old girl who lost her parents to typhus and lives with her despicable aunt and cousins who treat her poorly. After trying to defend herself from the taunting of her older cousin, she is sent to the Red Room, where she believes she sees the ghost of her kind uncle, and then faints. She wakes, and the physician suggests that she go to school, away from the unhappy culture. So she spends 6 years at school, 4 as a student, and 2 as a teacher, where she learns manners, compassion, and actually has friends. She later places an advertisement as a governess in the local newspaper and accepts the position at Thornfield with a 10-year-old girl. She then meets the master of the estate, Mr. Rochester, a mysterious and moody man and caregiver of the 10-year-old girl. She also learns that Thornfield has a secret. She keeps hearing maniacal laughter from time to time. Mr. Rochester leaves to attend a party, and a week later brings the party back to Thornfield. During a quiet time during the festivities, Mr. Rochester and Jane go for a walk and claim love to each other and end up engaged. A month later, when they are standing at the altar, their wedding is called off on account that Mr. Rochester is already married to the lady who makes maniacal laughter throughout the halls of Thornfield. Rochester tries to convince Jane to move away with him, but Jane leaves out of principle. She ends up cold and wet and is taken in by John Rivers and his sister, who help her back to health and help her find a schoolhouse job in the country. They later find out Jane's uncle has passed away, leaving her with a fortune, and that John and his sisters are actually Jane's cousins. so Jane splits the fortune with them. John later proposes to Jane and to move to India to be a missionary wife. Jane refuses the proposal as he does not love her, but will go to India as a sister. John will not agree, and Jane will not reconcile. She then starts to hear Rochester's voice calling out in the wind, which sends her back to Thornfield. The estate upon arrival is burnt to the ground, as Rochester's wife burnt it down and jumped from the roof to her death, and Mr. Rochester went blind from trying to save her. Jane finds Rochester in seclusion and carries a tray in for him, and the two are reunited again. They are married soon, and Rochester's vision starts to improve. So this book has been a favorite about 19th century women. I've read several in English class in high school because I didn't think that I would pick one up if I wasn't supposed to or required to read it. So I've read this book actually a few times since that assignment. What I love about Jane is that she stands up for her morals and beliefs. She doesn't come from money. She herself doesn't have much and is perfectly content to live with the basics and with a way to support herself. Materialistic items are not important to her in her position. They will not last. It's what's on the inside that matters. As Mark said in the Gospel, as he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." The Thornfield estate was described beautifully and elaborately, definitely a sign of wealth within that era. Although nothing lasts forever, as eventually the ill wife unfortunately burned down the house. The house itself was not important, as Rochester comes to realize, but that being true to yourself and the people you care for are much more important. Jane was never wanted anything or everything that Rochester could give her. She only wanted love that would transcend time longer than the building ever would. The second book I'll discuss is one that really touched me when I was actually in grade 5, and it actually inspired me to write a speech at that time. It's called Hannah's Suitcase by Karen Levine. This book is about how a suitcase arrived at a children's Holocaust education center in Tokyo, Japan, in March 2000, with the following words printed on it: Hannah Brady, May 16, 1931, Waisenkind, which means orphan in German. This led the children of the education center to ask her, who was she, what happened to her, which then prompted the curator, Fumiko Ishoka, I apologize, to begin a search across Europe and North America, and through 70 years of history, to find out about young Hannah and her family. The way the book was written has alternating chapters between Fumiko researching for answers in present day and Hannah living her life in Czechoslovakia in the 1930s. So you had both ends of history to represent the present day moving towards each other, one looking back in time and one living forward. Hannah was born on May 16th, 1931, and after the Nuremberg laws restricting what Jewish people could and could not do in 1939, 8-year-old Hannah and her older brother George watched their parents being arrested and taken away by the Nazis. They were never seen again. Hannah and George were then sent to Theresienstadt concentration camp, allowed only one suitcase, where they lived for about 4 years among starvation, disease, and terror. On October 23rd, 1944, Hannah was sent to Auschwitz and then the gas chambers upon arrival. Her brother George survived, working as a laborer, and that is who Fumiko later found living in Canada several years later after searching about Hannah. We are incredibly lucky to live in this wonderful country, and enjoy luxuries that we may take for granted, and yet other people don't have that privilege. Our country has so many things like healthcare, education, and the acceptance of everyone regardless of your background. It is incredible to think of what people like Hannah and George went through for just being born into a loving family and to be taught the Jewish faith. It is in some ways unimaginable to have lived through that. It is also, from looking at that time period, hard to decipher who to trust in times of fear and oppression. As in Mark, when he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be, and what will be the sign of all these things that are to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray." To think in some ways that Hitler and the Nazis led many astray, and that unfortunately many were convinced otherwise of his true nature. It would be very difficult to resist during a time like that. Although it is very important to do what you think is right, to stay your own path. Here, I understand Jesus to be saying, be aware, not beware, of people who may lead you astray. You will encounter many people in your life's journey that will want you to go in many different directions, though it is important to stay true to yourself and follow the path of love and standing by your own beliefs and morals. The final book I'd like to talk about is called I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zusak, written in the early 2000s. It takes place in Sydney, Australia, where the narrator, Ed Kennedy, an underage, lazy, 19-year-old cab driver, grew up and actually lives in part of the city where there's not really considered a lot of prospects in that part of town. He plays cards with his 3 friends, Marv, Audrey, and Richie, lives with a Rottweiler German Shepherd cross called Doorman, and spends too much time reading books. Ed is at the bank with Marv, which suddenly becomes the target for a robbery, of which Ed accidentally foils the robber's escape and makes him a hero. Shortly afterwards, he receives the Ace of Diamonds in the mail, with a list of addresses and times written on the card. With no further instructions, Ed decides to find out what they mean, which end up being a set of tasks he must complete. The first ace includes saving a woman from rape from her drunk husband almost every night, befriend and comfort an elderly, lonely lady, and help a teenage girl believe in herself and have confidence in her life. Ed decides to help these people in any way he can. Once he has completed these tasks, another ace card appears in the mail. This book deals with poverty, loss, love, violence, all real-life hard social issues that appear in today's world. It gets the reader to think about the question, why should I care? The last card is the Joker, with Ed's name on it. This is where Ed and the readers realize that Ed is not only the messenger, but also the message. The person who put Ed through this journey of aces proved that all people, even ordinary, lazy, plain as day ones, can rise above their perceived abilities and make a difference in the world. I love how this book has a message that can be taken and put forth to the reader, not just the characters in the book. It is one that deals with issues that are prevalent in our society right now, no matter where you look in the world. As Jesus said in the gospel, when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs. I can't say that I am in favor of war, loss, violence, or poverty, particularly when we hear about the terror that has filled cities and countries, even just this past week, like Beirut, Japan, Paris, Mexico, Baghdad, Lebanon, Iraq, and Syria. These events are the ones that are broadcasted over the news and social media. Unfortunately, it seems as if only after something so serious occurs does change start to happen. It also makes it hard to do something about it when you feel as if you do not have power to make a difference. While I doubt that we will have an Ace of Cards master plan a journey for us, as in the book, we can take from it that it is possible to rise and enact change by doing things that challenge us and yet help in small ways, since when we empower each other, great things can and have happened. Through books, we can draw out lessons based on others' experiences, whether fictitious or not. It doesn't matter if the characters in the book are ordinary as you and I, or as exciting as heroes, dragon fighters, witches, and wizards. We have within ourselves our own power, our own love, and our own morals and beliefs that guide and shape our character that we are true to, just like Jane Eyre. We understand that there are people, good and bad, that will influence our lives, and we need to stay the path and be true to ourselves, just like Hannah and George Brady. We also know, whether we acknowledge them or not, hard social issues that are part of our world, such as violence, loss, loneliness, as well as love. We have the ability, even if you think you do not, to make a difference in the individual lives of the people around you, which create a change in the greater world that we all live in, just like Ed Kennedy. As we go about our lives, let us never forget the limitless love that God shows us, that shows all of us, and the lessons from all books that shape who we are and who we can be. Amen.